Здравствуй, хозяин. Как настроение? Настроение хорошо у нас, хозяин. Мы можем строить все, что хозяина пожелает. Хотите, дом построим?
Xenus 2 White Gold War in Paradise is a semi-broken mess being sold on Steam for about 11 quid as of this time of writing. Underneath this is a tactical FPS RPG, which also happens to be a bit of a broken mess. It's a successor to Boiling Point. I made a review on that a year back, and I would recommend watching it. The two do share a design philosophy and general structure, with a lot of returning elements that will see a bit less explanation here, but a lot more comparison. The key difference here is setting. Rather than the forested South African country of Realia, this title takes place on a string of islands in wonderful Columbia, with a focus on travelling by boat. So immediately there's promises of cocaine and piracy. I was excited to see a contemporary setting with a focus on sea travel. I seem to have forgotten a very simple fact about myself, and that's that I find the sea far more boring than land. Plus, I never found that rideable shark. And, I don't know, but I feel that's a loss for all of us. Immediately after finishing Boiling Point, I did go looking for White Gold, but up until this game was released on Steam, it was a fruitless search. This game's prior English releases were all digital, and on websites that have long since died, and whoever holds the license to the Xenus series has likely gone as well. So why is this on Steam? Well, best guess is that this is a bootleg copy with the Steam API stapled to it. Fuss, no frills, no achievements or anything like that if you care. I couldn't even stream the thing through Steam, which my friend told me was unprecedented in his experience. Getting this game to even run as I wanted was an adventure in and of itself. For one thing, first time I launched the game, it's in Russian. Don't hold this against me, but I'm unable to speak Russian. That is more my fault than the game's, however. Thanks to a commenter on my Boiling Point video, I knew patches existed, but his comment was for some reason removed, I don't know why. But I was able to track down the fixes mentioned. The guy did offer to share his proper retail copy with me, and I am thankful for that, but I didn't take him up on the offer, on the basis that this version is what most people will likely experience at this point in time, so I may as well swim in the same sea. I will link the fixes used in the description, however patching the game did prove finicky. My first attempt removed the Russian, but replaced it with nothing. Now, while I can't speak Russian, I also can't hear silence. I had installed both patches as written. With some uninstalls, reinstalls, verifications, and redoing patches, I got into English for the cutscenes and silence for the free roam, where people just text boxed at me. I figured I could tolerate this. But then I got into a gunfight, and it turns out I silenced the weapons as well as the people. It turns out that playing an FPS without gunfire is absolutely intolerable. I would have guessed that, but it's nice to know for definite. Not even the rats noticed. So I deleted one patch or the other, reinstalled from scratch, and at one point just decided to call it a night. Next morning, with no further tampering, I launched the game. Gunfire in Russian. I gave up and decided, fuck it, I'll find someone who speaks Russian and ask them to translate the unsubtitled cutscenes. Then I got into a cutscene and they were in English.
Don't worry, Mr. Myers. Everything will work out great.
Look, I am sorry to be useless, but I have no idea what mishmash produced these results. Unscientific as it is, I got what I wanted. It did have one last problem, and that was that it would only have sounds the first time I launched it, barring a restart. I have no idea if this is a quirk unique to me or if everyone would get it. Before even going into the patching, I was anxious to play White Gold. I enjoyed roughly half of Boiling Point, getting weary as I went on. I needed a long break before I could even go back into this sort of game. As time went, I gained a respect for Boiling Point, for the unique experience it provided, its world, its characters, particularly my interpretation of Saul. Its janky gameplay and less than stellar acting, the mercenary feeling it created in its gameplay. I was looking forward to seeing its successor, but also dreading the inconveniences, and wondering whether it would even capture that bizarre mix a second time. It opens in a club. A famous rapper tucks into some cocaine. All seems right with the world. Elsewhere, a paranoid man is awoken from his slumber. At his door is a man from a record company.
Good morning. I'm Isaiah Miles from GBC Records. Mr. Jameson suggested me to work with you. May I come in?
That selfsame rapper died in the toilets. It's said to be a drug overdose. But no, the coke was poisoned. And it wasn't just him. Celebrities are dropping like flies.
They've been buying the drug from different dealers. But it looks like it's the Colombian cocaine.
think that's Columbia, pal. And Saul, as the best of the best at Special Forces operations in that part of the world, is asked to investigate. Saul, however, is unmoved, but after seeing a couple of photographs, one in particular taking his interest, he 180s.
Oh, hell.
So, it's up to us to save the celebrities. So, this is supposedly Saul Myers, former Foreign Legion. Same guy, no daughter. Looks different, much younger for a start, and now played by a Thornberry impersonator.
And who exactly has to answer for that?
I've since decided that Saul Myers is a code name, a bit like James Bond, and this is merely the latest Myers after the last one went into hiding after the unpleasantness of Realia.
Alright.
Cut to Columbian waters, and I definitely think the record label have got another different wrong Soul.
Hey old man, it's beautiful here, like in paradise. Why aren't there any tourists?
Saul seems to have lost his accent, well, his entire voice, and his memories of being the best at military operations in this kind of place. What an adorably naive line, but the Pope Man isn't much better.
It's bad for tourists, good for bandits, makes no difference to me.
Shortly thereafter, it makes a difference to him. We fight off some bizarrely well-equipped pursuers, but the boat is wrecked. We abandon ship and swim to the nearest island. Of course, we're off course. Our contact, CIA agent Weinstein, is a good ways away on the island of Bellina. We're currently wrecked on Espada, and with the current situation, nobody on this island is willing to go out into the waters and ferry us over. Luckily, Boatman has a couple of names to drop. His cousin Jose, an indecisive sort who has jumped from faction to faction before ending up here, and old Diego. Ah, Jose, info a man of. Meanwhile, old Diego is a crazy son of a bitch with luck on his side and no sense of self-preservation. If anyone will be crazy enough to go out to sea now, it'd be him. So that's our port of call for getting off this rock. But hey, we got a level up, so let's talk about that first of all. You might think it'd make more sense to actually get into gameplay first, but no, we're not going to do that. For each level up you get an entire hit point, which ranges from nothing to pointless depending on difficulty. That's not it, however. This game also has a perk system. Look at this menu. Yes, I'm well aware it's very ugly. If you're being nice to the game, you could think, well, at least it's utilitarian. I'd be inclined to agree. However, let me draw some lines to indicate a couple of upgrade paths. It's not only ugly, it's untidy. There is no organisation. They started out okay. Second, and perhaps more importantly, however, these unlocks are revolutionary. Think of the term perks. What springs to mind? If you're not giving too much credit, it's health bonuses, damage resistance, sprint gauge increases. Perhaps if you're being nicer, whole new abilities. Being more versatile's a perk. Well, okay, there's all that, but White Gold also has a different approach. You have to unlock the ability to aim your gun. I mean looking down the sights. That's the tip of the iceberg. Perhaps a bit more sensible, Saul can carry 30 kilograms of weight in his backpack. You need to unlock the ability to carry 10 more kilos to open up the perks to use the machine gun or the grenade launcher. Even if Saul can carry 30 kilograms of equipment no trouble, it's those slightly stronger shoulders that make all the difference. Each of the 3 perks to get 10 kilograms more carry weight says it ups it to 40 kilograms, because this translation is extreme garbage. There's a perk titled Grenade. If you don't have it, Saul gets depressed around the things and tries to kill himself. With the perk, the grenades are still awful, but further away. They operate on this rigid arc that I could never adapt to. It can still get worse though. Whenever you reload, the screen blurs, obscuring your vision. You can spend one of your levels to remedy this. It takes a certain level of creativity to be that boring. So in some instances, they've created problems merely for the perks to solve, and in other cases, you have to buy your way up to being a competent player character. There's also heightened drug resistance, haggling skills for lower prices, and a double jump that only sometimes works when you stand still, in a game where your jump is based on momentum. Some perks are given out as mission rewards, but I only noticed this happening once. Faster running speed and jump height might seem a bit dull, especially if you're not me and crave games that let you go fast, but they turn out to be incredible boons. I also love the wording here. We install perks. Little did I know we were playing as a fucking cyborg. It's a shame there's no perk to fix the FOV. This jumped out at me so fast. I feel sick whenever I go into interiors. I imagine this is what it feels like to be long-sighted, as everything felt way too close to my face. I did some small graphical and post-processing fixes for this game in config, but I could not fix the FOV. On the gameplay front, it feels like a streamlined boiling point. Things such as sleepiness and leveling individual weapon types via use has been removed, along with building up carry weight over time, thanks to those perks. Now hitting the F key brings up a small hotkey menu, with options for a flashlight, standing still for hours at a time, stealth mode, I guess we are a fucking cyborg, and switching between two different kinds of minimap. An actual minimap and a smaller compass. As far as additions on the FPS side of things, aiming in with weapons now iron sights them. It's a point of preference, but I do prefer iron sighting over a slight zoom in, particularly in games with realistic weapons. We can now also go prone, which expands our options for taking cover a fair bit, and helps out with stealth. Plus they've implemented sprinting, poorly, in two separate ways, one good and one bad. Bad is that even with upgrades, Saul can barely run. And how do you poorly implement sprinting in a good way? Well, just you wait. I do wish the game had leaning, but no luck there. The game also has lockpicking now. Lockpicks are in abundance, and thank fuck for that since it's pure probability with perks to raise your odds. So if you wish, you can save scum every lock in the game. I didn't feel much need to, but that's the basic gist of these systems. It's honor rules. Most boxes or enemy corpses will have a pick lock on them, and locked chests rarely offer anything better than scant pesos or ammunition. Some have some good stuff, but like real life burglary, it's a bit of a gamble what you'll get. A minor change in my case was that dying now kills you. Your enemies no longer send you to get patched up. So, I have a feeling old Diego's ferrying is not going to come cheap. If my experiences in Realia are any indication, I'm going to need the lay of the land, some contacts, local faction recruiters, a car, a bigger gun, enough syringes to kill a lesser man, and most importantly some pesos. So I set off to make some dosh. Let's talk to the locals, work out what's what. A footy match against Bellina 2 days from now. Look, I can't pitch, but you don't need to do that in football, right? Take me with you. Okay, so I told Marcelo to write a poem for his neglected feeling wife. Saul accuses this man of running a flop house, but it turns out he's just the empty bottle salesman. I bought an anchor from him, you never know. This man fixes faction relations, but then so does killing the right people. I did learn that these guys existed in Boiling Point, but hey, I found this one here. You would have been helpful last time. Our radio contact Jameson from Saul's old Special Forces days pops up to say that we're unfit and our gun is crap. Thanks, Jameson, that's part of why I'm trying to get a bigger gun and better cardio. Look, this is all well and good, but so many of you people have personal issues and side quests that I can't find anyone who'll just give me some pissing directions. Can't any of you see that I'm a lost gringa? Well, I do get pointed to a bandit chief living in town. I don't go for it. Shortly thereafter I find the shop. I'm told that criminal traders are making it tough for honest businessmen to live around here. That's rough, pal. I'll take the AK-47, pack of cards and some condoms. No coke for me, please. I've heard rumours. Part of why I'm keeping on the straight and narrow is this guy. You know, seeing as he's a former comrade of Saul, and it's never really established who, if anyone, is overseeing this operation. It'd be weird to go work for the bandits now, wouldn't it? As I head out of town and go to track down Jose, I'm greeted by a worrying sight. What is this exactly? And how do I make it extinct? Yeah, this guy crashed into a giant spider. These have been popping up as of late, and no one's quite sure why. It could be anything from radiation to UFOs. Despite the twist of mind control last time, I am worried we're going to see some shark jumping. Later mentions of zombies do little to assuage that. Moving past this, as we approach Jose's home, we're greeted by a group of armed kidnappers. We shoot them off, and rescue Jose. He tells us these goons were actually lying in wait for us. Jose says he'll help us out further and joins Jameson as a radio contact. What this means for us is that him and Jameson are going to bicker like the comic relief they aren't. Really, Jose doesn't give us any insight that we can't otherwise glean from just talking to people or, puzzling it out. A Mafia Don is imposing, you don't say. Jameson does have a gameplay purpose of giving us vague directions to side quests that we might otherwise miss, and he definitely should not care about. Who's where, up on that cliff? Why can you see what I see? Why are you asking me to pull over? It's a fucking librarian. Saul can't read. Hey, do you deal cocaine too? And besides how inconsequential their dialogue actually is, it's confined to a text box in the top left and they speak back and forth so slowly that most of the time I had to just pull over and devote time to listening to it, and I never gleaned anything useful out of it. Also, if Jose and Jameson are ever having a conversation or contacting you, Don't you dare open any menus, since that will remove their text box and it will not come back. And I haven't gotten any better at Russian yet, besides Gringa. Overall, I don't care for Jameson or Jose as contacts, partly for bland characterization. It may be due to poor translation, but their back and forth bickering just made me regret saving Jose. I saved him because supposedly he had worked for every faction in his past, jumping from group to group. He never proves useful for intel or gives good guidance of any kind. He just talks shit to us, tells us to get drunk, tells us to go work for the guerrillas. Mate, celebrities are dying overseas, take this seriously. I learned far more just talking to random people on the street and piecing together their accounts. Here's what I've gathered so far. We're on the island of Espada. There's a small bandit problem, some paramilitaries who are perma-pissed at us in case the game absolutely needs a gunfight, and the army and guerrillas are fighting for control of the region. It's the exact same roster of factions and they work pretty much the same as last time. If you want in good with one faction, murder a bunch of the other. Those lot will be none too pleased and will likely return fire. Let's nab some wheels and get to work. There are 2 people on this island who have cars. One of them needs to see a mechanic, and an arachnologist. The other, Rodrigo, took his car to be serviced just last night, and has not returned since. Though locals have heard a lot of gunfire, I haven't patched the game yet, so that's flagrantly impossible. It turns out that some paramilitaries have nicked his car, so we go and retrieve it for him. And Rodrigo's so happy he grants us free use of the thing. Jose argues we should join the guerrillas, and Jameson says we should make good with the military. Since I went guerrillas last time around, we're siding with the army this time. Fortunately for us, there's recruiters for both waiting at the garage for us, within spitting distance of one another. Spitting distance is also shooting distance, so they're both rather brave. But let's jump to driving. This time around, it's a lot more arcadey. I think part of that could be put down to the forced third-person camera. It was an option in Boiling Point which I neglected for the sake of immersion, but here, no real choice. The vehicles are also far less heavy than last time around, adding to this. Unfortunately, they're also far more slippery, which led to a couple of crashes. Besides that, there is this appalling motion blur. I was able to fix it with some config fuckery, but let's just look at it for a moment and be impressed at what we're missing. Overall, the driving would be an entirely boring yet necessary affair, were it not for one thing. The driving music, it's fantastic. Every time I did a job and got to get back in my vehicle and set off for the next adventure, this music felt like a fantastic closer. It's so grandiose and heroic. For the most part when I'm just heading from A to B, needlessly so. I adore this track. It's good enough for the final boss or the credits, but it's been handed over to the utterly mundane driving. I do have one last negative to end on, however. It relates to the slipperiness. Cars have been made far more fragile. I am slightly terrified of driving these exploding tin cans. But why have they been made far more fragile? Well, because there's a perk to drastically reduce the damage. The first job I'm tasked with is gathering evidence that the guerrillas are smuggling weapons onto Espada. I guess they were, since on the way there was a roadside gunfight, and they were indeed armed. I even collected some of the evidence to sell later. The roadside battles are now static instead of being random events. They'll trigger the first time you're around, and then the show is over. It's a small change, but nonetheless one I'm disappointed by. Factions who dislike you also no longer set up roadside ambushes or anything of the sort. This does lead to the factions feeling a lot more dull and pissing them off far less consequential. The world overall is a lot more lifeless. I sneak up on a hillside, so yeah, the stealth works. And I get the photos. Time to bugger off. Hey lads, keeping an eye on the corpses? Go kill some paramilitaries in the next town over? My yes or no choices readers, fuck yeah, I love murder! Or, no thanks, I'm full. The combat in this game is surprising. I still recognise Boiling Point in there, however it's faster paced and has seen some tightening up. Enemies tend to go down quicker and I never had any phantom bullets thanks to better hit detection. Save for one, every weapon I got my hands on was snappy and responsive. Same can't be said of the returning mind-controlled turrets, which are stunningly inaccurate and mostly just turn you into a sitting duck. Besides anything else, the crosshair is misaligned on these things. In most cases, I just get out and shoot foes on foot. I realised very quickly that I was making mistakes that would see me dead in Boiling Point, and walking away pretty much unscathed. Boiling Point was a slow-paced game in which things died very quickly, including you. You'd creep about in a fight, get a sight on someone, maybe confront them for a split second, and if you beefed it, you would get hurt. Then you'd use syringes, it'd get less effective as Saul built a tolerance to them. I was told that I should have carried and made greater use of food items, as you tend not to build a tolerance to eating. I did that here and found that rather than just backing up my syringes, the food pretty much covered it. Enemies seem slower to react and far less accurate. I'm wading through battles, taking hits and shrugging them off as well. I can down a banana or a coconut when everyone's dead and I'm sorted. Got some potassium too. As I get into the swing of things, I'm barely taking damage. The addition of going prone helps with this, and if leaning was in here, I'm pretty sure I'd be untouchable. So it's Boiling Point, but without any of the bite. I do later pop the difficulty up to hard to see if I can remedy this. This is pure speculation, and yell at me if you think I'm being unfair, but Deep Shadows wanted this game out on consoles as well as PC. And I think normal difficulty reflects the slower-paced controls of a console FPS. The UI, while it would still be awful on a console, also seems to be made to fit a last-gen console's demands. Well, still, another job done. I head back to town to stock up on the mostly nothing I need for the next skirmish. This time we're headed to Gorrion, a town on the other side of the island where paramilitaries, bandits, and old Diego await. While heading back to my car, however, I learned something. I think I found a way to make the combat fun again. So, when I said that sprinting was poorly implemented, it's because someone didn't think about the fact that jumping builds off of your momentum. You jump forwards, you gain speed from the leap. If you upgrade your running speed, this happens. So you run and you jump and you get ready for whiplash. I can actually circle strafe enemies so fast they forget where I am. The shotgun in this game is actually pretty good, decent range, automatic, tight spread, and now I can close the gap in no time flat. It's the ultimate hit and run weapon and it's so fun to use. I just realised saying this, I should have comboed dropping grenades with this, but too little too late. If I ever walk into a room and decide I don't like it, whoosh, I'm out. I can clear the Town of Gorrion in about 10 seconds flat. Taking coke also ups your movement speed and slows enemies down if you take it in bulk. It makes your movement wobbly, however, so be prepared to, jump a good 10 meters to the left. Besides that, you can go bloody supersonic if you fancy. So it's unintentional, at least I think so, but the movement in this game is so busted that it actually worked out kind of saving the gameplay for me. Armed with this, I mopped the floor with the guerrillas, bandits, and paramilitaries on Espada, handing the place to the military on a silver, blood-stained platter. I got some money out of the deal too. Killing all the bandits at the old leisure resort by the coast was less about money and more about them opening fire on me, but it stands that they're dead. Well, except for their boss, I spared him. The game is still easy. I'm taking more damage as this is a very reckless style of play, far less practical than taking cover and flanking, but I never needed to make the combat fun in Boiling Point. The challenge it provided shaped how I played, and I enjoyed it for that challenge. This also invalidates being sneaky somewhat. I treat being stealthy in a game such as this as a way of conserving resources and being tight-fisted. I'm stealthy because I enjoy the tension. I want to outsmart an enemy who could easily destroy me, lowering the amount of enemies before I get spotted and then have to fight. However, I'm now Sonic the Gun Hog, and stealth is slower. Anyway, I've already shot the place up, but what's Gorrion like? It's sort of embarrassing, to be frank. Everyone who comes here has failed in some fashion besides old Diego. At the road into town there is a giant sinkhole, next to which is a comedian. The sinkhole is far and away the funnier of the two. Why is there a sinkhole? Well, why is the whole town a bombed out mess? The military wanted to bomb Don Guillermo's coke plantation and missed. By 10 miles. Don Guillermo also resides on Bellina. I'm starting to think joining the army wasn't the least morally bankrupt option. A bunch of soldiers and Mafia men have moved into houses right next to each other, and have only now realised and started fighting. There's a group of CIA agents who were stationed in the wrong place. They're meant to be in Peru. I gave some mafioso 10 lines of coke and got a second car. I'd scrambled up some loose coke from all the corpses, so this was an easy deal. The one person here who I comprehended was this guy. We have an extended discussion about beer. I myself am a fan of porters and dark ales in general. Snecklifter, Hobgoblin. Stouts are pretty good too. I like Black Cab and... Why am I talking to you? The people in the first town were a bunch of bizarre fuck-ups, but Gorrion seems to attract failure. That must be why I'm here. It may well be that old Diego hogs all of the town's luck for himself. He's down to brave the waters and get us over to Bellina, and of course it won't come free. He'll take either 6,000 pesos or a black pearl that a local diver found. Seeing as I know that not paying up won't always be an option, let's go look into this pearl. Well, the diving crew has surfaced, but it seems that Javier, the bloke with the pearl, is in a bit of a bind. As they were headed back, a giant black mutated sea creature approached the group, causing them to panic and scatter. Javier gave the signal to drop the oxygen tanks to swim faster. Everyone got the memo and cleared out. Except Javier swam down, back into the cave they were leaving. This was a sad fate, I agree. Luckily the cave had air holes, so he's likely still kicking. There's one spare tank. Unfortunately, it's owned by a guy called Lonzo on the other side of the island. Gotta say, I hope this wasn't how you lads made your living. And naturally, it falls to Saul to go and get the tank. It turns out that Lonzo is a paranoid man, as Saul opens their conversation with the dumbest line he could in a violent country like this. Luckily, we're quickly back on track, and while Lonzo wants money for the tank, he believes me when I say Javier will pay up for it when he's back on dry land. I head back to the beach and fill up the tank, giving me an oxygen tank of oxygen. And I can't equip it. Double-clicking doesn't work, it won't go into my hotkeys, nor the armor slot. I assumed I was doing something wrong, and yes, I was. So here I am, swimming down into the caves, the interior of which is a labyrinthine mess, luckily lined with air pockets, well, air caverns. However, I was dying on the way in. I don't think I have the health items necessary to get in and out okay. So I surface, go to the bandit layer I cleared up earlier, and shoot their leader Juarez in the face for better lungs. And back in I go. So after a long, tedious swim, I find Javier, and it turns out I wasn't even meant to try and equip the tank. Saul just wanted to deliver it. Makes sense. If you can come up with a plan like that, you've no doubt dealt with oxygen deprivation before. I decided from here to keep track of how many times I need to go underwater beyond this point, as there is a second level up for better oxygen. I'll give you the answer now, as it was never. That giant black mutated creature was never seen and never heard of again. Anyway, Javier readily hands over the Black Pearl once we make it to shore. I take it to old Diego, and he says to deliver it as a gift to his granddaughter. Sure, because you can't just do that yourself once we're back. Hey, Diego, you're looking young. Oh, it's because you're not him. So, in the 2 minutes I've been gone, Diego was kidnapped by the bandits I killed. Okay, Juarez was replaced with Ramon at least, but everyone else remained dead. Ramon also made the mistake of shooting at me on sight. And thus we leave Espada, knowing everyone in Gorrion is a complete fuck-up. Except for maybe the granddaughter, but that could well be the small amount of time spent with her. Old Diego sneaks us past a few patrols, and with that we're in Bellina. I'd hesitate to call it a warm welcome, more a hot one, as some mafioso and guerrillas are holding a shootout at the docks leading into town. A little bit busy, mate. Me and the gorillas have a mutual shoot-on-sight understanding. Alright, they're all dead. Where's this girl? Never found her. Well, taking my mind off of that, let's pick this place clean. No one actually cares if you nick the entire town's supply of fruit and veg, and the corpses care even less for their ammo and cash. We'll lockpick this car as well, may as well get a set of wheels. Yeah, you can lockpick vehicles too, including boats and aircraft. If you're wondering why I didn't just steal a boat on Espada and hightail it here earlier, it's pretty much because you're not allowed to. Some designated vehicles can't be picked. This is so we can't just bypass talking to the important character of Old Diego, who will never appear or even warrant mention again. There is actually a way off of Espada early though, through some thoughtful quest givers who gave no thought to the main quest, and bless them for it. Every other vehicle is fair game, however, at least if they're listed as belonging to civilians. Then no one cares if they're stolen. They must have known it was their own fault for not having the magic locks. I take the truck into town and start looking for CIA agent Weinstein. I think I've tracked him down. Sarcastic or a little bitch? Weinstein brings us up to speed, which isn't really helpful in and of itself, especially since most of our leads are cold, and all previous agents sent to investigate the poisoned cocaine have either died or gone missing. The last agent to disappear did have a contact in the form of Eudez, however, and we're warned that what he knows will likely not come cheap. Plus the phrasing I'm being given here is leading me to believe that I'm about to pay for my own betrayal, and it doesn't seem like the CIA is going to cover that expense. I check in on Eudez, and indeed, he wants a big old 10 grand. Well, I want and need some money in my pocket and the lowdown on Bellina, so let's have a wander. Well, one man's drawn a crowd, says he's going to kill himself. I'm guessing by jumping off of this. Saul tries to talk him down, and either way I guess he'll succeed in that much. He mentions his wife, and Saul rushes off to get her. Naturally, she's deathly concerned. We must hurry, she yells. This is a wife or death situation, Valencia. Come on. And, oh dear, it turns out that wasn't his wife, it was his psychologist. Shit, he's less stupid than I thought. I dip an old psychic's fags in milk to make her sick so some guy can talk his mother out of getting bullshitted on the reg. Fish an old man's cap out of the bay and return it to him. Even repair the local bridge after a particularly rude woman yells at me and the drunk carpenter refuses to be useful. Actually got decently paid for that one too. At the market I find a man who wants to start an army to kill all the world's hippies and tries to recruit a less than interested soul. There's like one other hippie on the island and she's right there. Oh no, the sponsors are ruined. Nearby is a kid whose island was attacked by paramilitaries. His village was taken captive, but he managed to flee and swim over here to find help. Says it's only a mile away. And hey, I can see all boats here, so let's go. Hold up one tick. 3.8 kilometers isn't a mile. That's more than double. After the murder, I let the elder know that it's safe.
Сеньор, это очень опасно.
B for effort. By the way, you've got a top-tier swimmer. Give him props when he gets back, because I'm not giving him a lift. I get into an extended conversation with a local shopkeep. By now, I have pieced together the situation on Bellina, but he gives us the most in-depth appraisal. The military is, for the most part, absent around these parts, with the guerrillas and the Mafia vying for control. The guerrillas are generally not well liked, as their violent revolution actually makes life harder for the common person. And they'd much rather the guerrillas just bugger off. Meanwhile, the Mafia, while by no means good, are definitely better to live under, as Don Guillermo is a businessman first. Harmed civilians, unrest, and bandits are bad for business, so he keeps the island clean for the most part. Bellina is my favourite island in the game, and I wish this situation got fleshed out a bit more. That's pretty much all I gleaned, and I think that's pretty much all there is to it. And just as we're talking about how little this place is stuck up, surrounded, several against Saul, and they got the drop. Poor sods. And a stunned shopkeeper is regaled with the tale of this one dead bloke in Saul's former squad, which he seems to brush off with some barely concealed disinterest. Then he gives us 10 pies and sends us on our way. So my options are basically work for the Mafia or the guerrillas. That's a tricky moral choice, isn't it? The lesser of two evils who pay better or cheap arseholes. In person, Don Guillermo is a giant, soft-spoken man who makes about 20 death threats per sentence. He doesn't trust that Saul is all he's cracked up to be and hates unwarranted arrogance. He is probably the most interesting character in the game, If you want to actually finish this game, you're going to need cash, as much of it as the game will give you. It was true in Boiling Point, and it's truer here. I wanted to stay legit in this game, but either one of my choices here are not good. I'm now aiding a man growing coke, without any questions as to whether it killed anyone. Jameson definitely disapproves. Jose argues that the gorillas are more fun without any considerations for the mission, but that doesn't sway me anyway since the Mafia pays better and money buys fun. I don't care that Jameson disapproves or Jose insinuates that my choice is the boring one. More that anyone is on the radio to disapprove. I did later learn that there was a military bloke around here. It doesn't matter though. Just doing his jobs would not have drummed up enough cash to finish this game. I needed that and more. I'm going to take a massive step backwards and talk about premise and then all the little things that White Gold also gets wrong. I am worrying that I'm bringing up Boiling Point a bit too much in this video, but sod it, here we go. These two are open-world RPGs with faction relations, faction side quests, simple dialogue trees, and the main plot requiring a hefty monetary investment. Side missions also pay poorly, so you have to be tight-fisted. In Boiling Point, the premise is simple but works very, very well for this setup. Lisa is kidnapped in the country of Realia, but manages to warn her father Saul in time, and he sets off to find her, using her scarce connections to start his search. Being a complete stranger in the country with no official support, he seeks her out, and through her old colleague at the local paper, finds out the last person she spoke with was Don Pedro. We're pointed to his estate, and nothing else. The game tells you to go to Don Pedro, but not how. You can drive right over and try and shoot your way in. Or you can talk to others and learn things, get secret passage details from the palace's architect, learn things about the country, do some jobs for the factions to build up money and relations. Or in my case, I made friends with the Mafia and thus was able to get into Pedro's home peacefully by making friends with one of his associates. I felt like the game rewarded me for buying into the setting and politicking via the faction system. And I'm actually kind of saddened in how little the factions usually tie into the main plot beyond this point. Still, choosing your allies could let you progress through the main plot in different ways. The Don felt like a fallback option when you couldn't get info elsewhere cheaper. Two different people would surely know the same thing, and when someone friendly to you did, that's perfect. It made the world feel more alive and the factions more meaningful, whereas in White Gold they felt like money dispensers and little else. They didn't feel like distinct entities I was curious about. Saul being alone in the country with no oversight was a big part of that. Saul is a rogue element, a former Special Forces operative who's willing to sell his services for information and money, in a country with violent competing groups. Surely he'd be hot property. Plus, in a plot about finding his daughter, you could justify Saul working with some less than savoury people to get the job done. In White Gold, we've been contracted out by a record company and have a handler in the form of Jameson, soon joined by Jose, and we're told to contact the CIA first thing. Working for groups like the Mafia, the Guerrillas, or the Bandits is still doable, but the game has to create excuses for it. Especially because we're here on official-ish crime-stopping business. Plus, we're not told which group is seemingly responsible for the poisoned coke. So it's not even like we're joining a group to act as an inside man, or siding with criminal groups for their information or sway within the region, like we could reasonably do last time. Having a boss is a bad angle in this kind of setup since it makes several options weird to do. Boiling Point achieves something pretty good, something I hear people complaining about when discussing Fallout 4. We're out here trying to save our kid. So side questing is something that you have to justify to yourself since it detracts from valuable kid-saving time. Here, everyone else is trading info for cash or favours, so side questing and gathering information still felt like I was working my way to Lisa. Even if I was raiding the same army base for the third time, I still need to know what Pedro knows. Here, it feels weird. I need 10,000 pesos for Eudez to make a phone call? Say, Jameson, Jose, CIA, record company. Any one of you guys willing to front the cash? No? We may as well be independent. It made sense we couldn't threaten Don Pedro, as he had an army alongside all the information, which is pretty good leverage. We're never allowed to threaten people for information here, and there's only one person who has it. So you need that dosh. A simple change, but it would have been so much better if we were sent in off the books with no contact, no asking how the job gets done, no accountability. Just stop the coke, here's the codename Saul Myers, no one will question it. Don't tell me to go drinking, I'm here on business. Beyond just premise, White Gold fails to recapture what I enjoyed about Boiling Point, and besides the tightened up combat, hasn't really replaced it with anything. The character of Saul, for a star, in Boiling Point he came off as a middle-aged dad who desperately wanted to be an action star, so he'd act cool and cocky to people. It was clear he had a head on his shoulders, but he came off like a dork at times.
Okay, Don Esteban. I used to kick ass at Driver 3, so I won't have any problems with this mission.
A good degree of his lines were also voiced, and the performance provided was really good at conveying this likely unintentional character. Xenus 2 doesn't voice Saul outside of cutscenes, and that's fair, I suppose. It likely saves some dosh, and not everyone cares for a voiced character in RPGs. Reading off what you chose to say in a text box could be seen as a bit redundant. It does mean that Saul feels like he has less character, however. This Saul comes off as a young, impetuous moron who happens to see violence the way others see food. If he gets excited or agitated, he's liable to either bitch about it or spout off a war story. He's amusing, but he doesn't hold a candle to old Saul. While Saul talks less, everyone else has a fucking speech prepared. NPCs in this game are worryingly long-winded, but manage to say very little of interest whatsoever. That may just be the awful translation I'm working with, however. But, translation aside, it's not just the people. The map screen is a dreadful bore lacking in utility or looks. It's just an image. In the first game, you could click on the map to pull up a zoomed-in box. It also tagged vehicles you'd previously used, so you could easily get back to them. Vehicles in Boiling Point I cared for, losing them was costly, especially if you were a fair distance from an urban centre, and getting a new one in good condition was a bit of a pain, especially when stranded. Plus, certain vehicles, such as helicopters, planes, or boats, were exceedingly rare, at least in my experience. While I didn't like how helicopters in particular handled, I did want one for making late-game travel a little bit easier. What vehicles I had, however, I had to keep fueled up and in good kit. They weren't only transport, but stashes for my stuff due to limited inventory space. A car going up in flames slowed me down in more ways than one. Over the course of the whole game, I splurged on one car knowing it'd be abandoned on the mission, using it as a battering ram and scarpering with the truck I had to steal, and I felt that cost for a bit, seeing as it came out of my earnings for the mission. In Xenus, I have no care for my vehicles whatsoever. I had several cars by the time I left Espada, and by the very nature of the map, they would only be useful on Espada. Plus, I can just sprint jump everywhere, and acquiring new boats for sea travel is no big deal. It's very easy. I did a side quest. Back on Espada there was Carrizo, claimed to be the island's librarian. Saul and librarians don't really align, but he wanted this rare book, and that's actionable. He said that a man on Bellina may know where it is, and here on Bellina that man is Fabio. Turns out a few decades back the two had a spat, but Myers makes himself look like a simpleton to both of them, and this gets the book from one to the other. Granted, I had to ferry it myself. Hey look, I got from Bellina to Espada and back, completely fine. Didn't see a single pirate. The sea is boring. It's a huge mass of awful tasting water which actually dehydrates you. It's got interesting stuff in it, but for the most part, it's a wash. Land is far better. If you disagree, try living in the sea for a bit. You'll come crawling back. Travelling in Boiling Point felt like traversing a dangerous country. Threats could be waiting just behind the tree line. Sites mark the side of the winding roads, markets, old bridges, gas stations, back roads and dirt paths leading to encampments. The views occasionally weren't bad either. In Xenus, I pointed to the island I wanted to go to, and held W for several minutes at a time. I saw a statue once, I figured it'd be a site of a future gunfight and checked it out. Never saw it again, maybe I missed it. If you're doing a quest sending you to another island, that's 2 trips, one there and one back. The ocean in Xenus is dead. I was never once attacked while out at sea, and I think I saw a grand total of 3 other boats during my 27-hour playtime. The closest I came to excitement at sea was when a helicopter chased me in from land. I actually had to drag excitement over. Essentially, the ocean feels like an excuse to not make land rather than anything engaging. If the islands themselves were hugely interesting or the sea more lively, this would be fine, but out of my time playing, there were only 6 or so notable islands, 3 of which I only visited once as a quest required it. Factions who disliked me never ambushed me at sea, or on land. I never felt threatened. I never saw any conflict on the waters between enemy factions either, or an assault on land by boat. No pirates or smugglers, fishermen out doing their rounds, seaplanes taking flight. I saw 1 patrol boat from land while on Espada, at a point where I could do nothing but fire at it fruitlessly. The world felt dead and I never got the impression factions cared about their goals. While Boiling Point sustained the illusion of a country, however condensed and bizarre, this feels like a set. I bought into Boiling Point because of the roaming patrols in the forests, the scattered roadside gunfights, and the setup of Saul being a truly independent force in the country, and it was a country fraught with danger. This world lacks it, and it was that lack of danger that led to me bumping up the difficulty to hard. Well, sense of danger somewhat returned, but definitely raised. My first job with the Don was prior to the switch, so it was one last uncontested slaughter. Some bandits were harassing a bar in town and that won't fly. Violence is to be a last resort, however. I have to try and talk them down. The bandits didn't get the memo and opened fire, so I killed all of them and their mates down the road. Can you believe at the end of this the Don was annoyed with me? Second job was when I put the difficulty up. Check up on a missing consignment. I arrived to find it had been held up by guerrillas. The leap in difficulty is massive. This was a bad first encounter for hard mode. There's a group of mafioso defending the trucks, the guerrillas are dug in by the roadside and up on the nearby hill, and occasionally they lob grenades. If the trucks are blown up, I fail the mission. I have to draw their ire and their fire fast, and on this difficulty that's actually a risky thing to try and do. Enemies on hard are quicker on the draw, far more accurate, seemingly far less stupid, the amount of damage they deal far greater. I wanted Boiling Points challenge? Well, I still haven't got it. It's far harder. This isn't bad, however. I thought it was at first, but that was the adjustment period, and I'm glad I was stubborn enough to not back down. Especially as later fights wouldn't have this caveat of defending a truck. The combat is, however, closer to what I enjoyed last time around, medium to long range skirmishes requiring good use of cover, flanking, and using vantage points to good effect, and close range encounters end very quickly. The ability to go prone is now much appreciated, it fits in very well. It's not quite a comfortable change in difficulty as the jumping challenge is insane, and I can see some people finding normal far too easy and hard far too hard. Anyway, after more than a couple of tries, the trucks are safe and I am riddled with bullets. Don's missions would make for a solid introduction to the difficulty were it not for one issue. After the convoy attack, the Don decides that we're to push the guerrillas off of Bellina. We begin by taking a helicopter and attacking a guerrilla base on Espada to weaken their hold and draw them there, I suppose. Let's separate enemy accuracy on normal and hard with this example. On normal, they miss me up close because I'm jumping pretty fast. On hard, I am getting shot to death in a helicopter cockpit while doing a strafing run at 100 feet or so up. It's not the helicopter getting shot, it's me. I felt safer when I landed and started dislodging them on foot. I steal some military documents, as the army intends to retry bombing the Don's coke fields, especially since they missed by, 20 miles last time? I actually had to make fake documentation and a uniform for this, despite my past dealings with the military. I say make, not acquire, as the forger was drunk and told Saul to do it. Also, no one cares that this random just wandered into the base and started stashing all the AKs no one uses into his bag. All the weapon props here are in pristine condition, the army doesn't even use AKs, so I can only guess their bloody decoration. A small side note, but weapon degradation is still in the game. Enemy weapons tend to fluctuate more, however. While every ranged weapon in Reale would disintegrate in Saul's hands, here they go from 15 to 80%, with the percentage being the odds of a misfire. This means enemy firearms are at least usable in a pinch, and you can find serviceable gear to hold on to, not just buy. Plus, the randomized enemy loot is far more likely to have precious gems or jewelry to help with the meager earnings this game hands out. And, that's it actually, since the Don then went into an infinite conversation loop about the Forger, and since the Forger disappeared, the Don's brain rapidly melted. Meaning the guerrillas will live to see another day. Still, I at least got the necessary pesos for plot progress, so let's hit the bar. I pay up and he puts in a phone call to the Machete Man.
Может, ты где-то встречал? Не подскажешь? Я даже не успел сказать, что за...
Arranged everything for you, sir. Of course, it cost a pretty penny. I had to give up a packet of cocaine for it. Don't worry, Mr. Myers. Everything will work out great.
Why, thank you, little boy in an office somewhere. I must say, you sound very bored for how fidgety you are. We're led to a courtyard, and far more interestingly, an ambush.
Sorry, Myers, but they happen to offer more money.
I get eviscerated. These lads are something else, incredibly accurate bullet sponges, able to occasionally survive headshots, hard to stumble, and in a group with an advantageous position. If nothing else, I buy why everyone else sent to investigate died if the coke trade has goons like this. So the best way to fight them is to circle the courtyard and whittle them down by shooting their shins while they can't see you. After escaping, Eudez has already fled, and we're once again out of leads. We go to Weinstein, and to his credit, he's more useless than I imagined. He says there's a local conman named Juan who may know where he went. What a fantastic source there, Weinstein. I'll be right back with Eudez's coordinates, and the deed to an island as well. Juan says he'll tell us where Eudez is, seeing as Eudez burned him in the past, and give us the deed to an island for 8 grand. Juan pushes the island so much, Saul forgets why the fuck he's here. He buys into it so much that I'm immediately suspicious, because I don't trust Saul's judgment. He opens by trying to sell it to us like we're a usual mark. Saul asks for information about Eudez, and I think some wires crossed in Juan's mind and he decides that it's a package deal. Saul then immediately loses his marbles and asks after the island as well. Oh, by the way, Eudez also has armed goons. I mean, besides these a lot. Regardless, I don't have 8 grand, Eudez, or an island. I'm broke, the Don is broken, it's too late to make friends with the gorillas, I can't be bothered to go back to Espada, and it'd likely cost money to smooth it over. Yeah, in main plot terms, immediately after paying 10 grand, you need to deposit another 8. I do imagine most people at this point would tell the game to sod off, as most side quests pay in the 800 to 1500 peso range. I wouldn't hold it against them. Luckily, Sergeant Galindo Gibbison is drinking at this self-same bar. He tells us to report to Captain Quesada at the tank proving grounds a few islands over if we want some work. It's a disputed territory between the military, guerrillas, and the bandits. Well, short on cash and wanting a bit more experience with hard difficulty, I head off. Bearing in mind this island isn't named, I settled on calling it Battle Island. It's a large hilly area, sparse on buildings, but it has a few oil pumps around the centre that are likely the cause of all this contention. The Battle Island is a playground. It has the biggest battles, and near every mission will give you a new toy to play with. An armoured jeep, a battle tank, a SAM launcher, or a helicopter. Or else it'll task you with killing 30 people on foot solo. This was a proving ground for hard mode. I'm glad I came here so soon after cranking up the challenge. The sparse scenery, constant changes in elevation, and minuscule but present cover probably gave me some of the best shootouts I've had between this and Boiling Point. Reporting to the captain, our first job is to blow up a distillery the bandits have established at their base of operations on the other side of the island. I set off immediately, and as I arrive I realise something. Because I'm a moron, I left my good gun back in my trunk in Bellina. The best weapon I have to hand is a shitty busted up M16. I still try and make a foothold and fight my way to the still, but it's an uphill battle, especially as the bandits are spread wide and have watchtowers. My weapon constantly jamming is just one small part of this bad decision I've made. Eventually I give in and start sprint jumping back across the island because I also lost my ATV in the mad scramble. In my panicked retreat I jump through several more gunfights, jumping and gunning my way back to any safety I can find. Yeah, sprint jumping still has a very useful place in this difficulty, but it's far more useful as a defensive move. Even as an accident, it locks into the gameplay and it was quite satisfying to make use of. On the way back, I did manage to get my hands on a serviceable AK, but unfortunately the quartermaster here doesn't sell ammo for it. So I go out hunting for a few small enemy patrols to scrounge up some bullets, and then I can make another attempt on that still. And I realise the sea can be good for something. I take a jet ski around the back of the camp, climb the hill, and attempt to sneak in. Stealth was needless on normal difficulty. I gave it a shake here and there, but getting spotted into a firefight wasn't something I was afraid of. Now, however, a gunfight can be a serious setback, so stealth naturally became more sensible and rewarding. In this case, I slip around the back, plant the TNT the army supplied me with, and sprint back out in no time flat. The stealth system implemented here generally works far better than any attempt at stealth in Boiling Point. I put a big part of that down to better hit detection. If I sneak up behind someone and stab them in the head here, they tend to drop dead, and silently. The game also attempts to encourage stealth in a sensible way when it's toggled on. You walk slower, you get a heartbeat to indicate likelihood of getting spotted, and it's a pretty good indicator of whether someone off to the side is eyeing you. Plus, if you turn the minimap to a compass, it will highlight enemy directions and give a vague approximation of distance. I will say this for stealth, however. Enemies are typically clumped together in such a way that ghosting a majority of missions is incredibly tricky. I hesitate to say impossible since I'm shite at stealth, but for me it was handy for picking off a few enemies on a difficulty where any one of them could potentially kill or cripple me, though I noticed limb damage was less of a factor overall. The game also does take you up stealth mode automatically when you're shot, putting you back to default movement speed so you can dart for cover and making it easier to return fire. Stealth mode is also handy during combat for getting your bearings, since as noted it will highlight enemy directions. It's also on Battle Island I learned that hard mode enemies can be pretty smart. They don't pursue heavily, more standing their ground and making you approach them, making liberal use of grenades to flush you out, and only occasionally moving to flank when in a group. Taking out an entire enemy encampment by waiting them out would be a very long and boring process, and not one without danger since you'll be dodging grenades. Hard mode was its own brand of fun, and with stealth, I added to that. While I enjoyed curb stomping normal with the aid of sprint jumping, it was a bit hollow. Hard was rewarding. It made me use every last advantage I could glean, including stealth and sprint jumping, to retreat and change cover. When I saw a distant enemy drop from a well-placed shot, I got a sense of relief. When a foe charged me, I had to prioritize them. Plus, unlike Boiling Point, where assault rifles were the best weapon in any scenario, here I find myself mixing it up a lot more with the auto shotgun and sniper rifle. Range is more of a factor to take into account. I'm also using coke when I need to retreat or slow things down. It's a bit too unwieldy to whip it out in every situation, but I'm sure that's true of coke in real life as well. I head back to the military base. It seems that either the Doctor is bugged or Saul is a selective cheapskate, as for some reason I can't pay the Doctor to heal me, and as such he won't heal me. Saul yells that he's a rip-off despite the fact that I have paid for pricier patching up in the past. That Mafia medical service has just spoiled Saul. So, the whole time I'm here, I will not be able to reset my medicine addiction. This is going to be tricky. Anyway, with the hooch destroyed, the captain is pleased. Saul does ask an interesting question, whether it would have been more profitable to take the hooch for the military. It would definitely boost morale at the least. The captain says he considered it, but didn't want the men drinking. His disciplinary attitude is never really apparent again, sadly. Our next ventures are all about getting the guerrillas out of here. First, we're given a tank and told to go take down a weapons shipment. I just realised there are no licenses in this game, you just get in and go. I'm in favour. The tank is a blast. Its controls are simple and straightforward, its turrets actually kill things. I ran out of MG ammo pretty quick and couldn't find a way to replenish it, but the main cannon was plenty. And you can run people down forever. The thing is nigh indestructible. I got it through so many gunfights, mostly just running people over. That convoy was no trouble. The best part? Mission vehicles don't despawn when you're done, which is handy as later on we're tasked with destroying guerrilla tanks. I mean, no one's driving them, but they are surrounded by enemy troops shooting at me, so I brought my own tank along anyway so they can look at it and go, "Oh yeah, that's what you meant to do." We also have to retrieve a stolen military chopper from Guerrilla HQ. Assaulting it head-on proved difficult, and incredibly stupid. Far too many people, and since we're taking a chopper I didn't want to dump the tank here. I eventually find the chopper in question by spying from a nearby hillside. I then make a mad dash for it and manage to get it out of there. After a couple of tries. Next up was taking a SAM launcher out to the centre of the island to repel the invading guerrilla air force. This proved impossible as the helicopters could easily overwhelm the SAM with its slow fire rate. I had a fantastic idea, however. I took the helicopter, parked it at the mission site, brought the SAM along, almost had a fucking heart attack, and when the helicopters arrived thinking it'd be an adorable little surface-to-air missile, it was instead a surface-to-air helicopter. The helicopters are a fair bit more agile this time around, control a lot more simply as well. Rather than the stiff whirlybirds of Boiling Point, these are somewhat fun to manoeuvre around in. I'm actually sad, and this is the only time in the game I got to use one of these to combat other aerial units. Vehicles overall were underutilised in this game, and I say that considering how much boating needs to be done. I never saw a tank anywhere else. Last mission is pretty straightforward. Seeing that Saul is pretty bloody lethal, the captain just jokes, "Hey, why don't we just kill all of the guerrillas?" If you know Saul, however, you will know he's not great with irony. The Battle Island was probably my favourite time spent in this game, and what I feel more of what this game should have strived for, if it could mix the gameplay qualities of this place with the story setups of Bellina and make it more widespread, I'd have been happier overall. Interesting missions with more characters like Don Guillermo and how the citizens see their lot in life under the various factions' power struggles. Throw in a few vehicles, make me blow up a few stills, destroy a few more convoys, I'd have been happy. It does still struggle with problems affecting the rest of the world, however. Since all of the battles are preset and static, the Battle Island starts off incredibly chaotic. It's a war zone. It very quickly and literally dies down after you've triggered each of the battles. While it may have been annoying to make this place a constant frenzy, it would have lent some weight to the idea that this place is hotly contested. I do also wish that during the final mission in this place, when Saul is sent to uproot the guerrillas, the army actually, sent some lads along with me so it felt like a battle was taking place. rather than me soloing their job. Granted, I brought the tank, so I wasn't completely alone. Want to know how much killing every last stinking commie at that base got me? 1,500 pesos. Like I said earlier, that's the upper end of the game's payout. I also loot every corpse, salvage firearms and ammunition, and cram it all into a card to sell off later. It barely helps. I figured people got into murder because it was lucrative, but I could well be wrong. Still, I've made up the money to progress the plot, so let's get back to Bellina. The Battle Island is defeated. It's quiet now. I kind of feel like I've sullied the place. So, to be honest, it may have been poor translation, more likely I'm a moron, but we really are getting a goddamn island out of this. We're handed the deed and told Eudez's location. I have a plan for at least one of these things. Before I set off, let's make a huge mistake. Considering how useful stealth was on Battle Island, I decide to treat myself to a fancy new crossbow. While Don Guillermo claims to keep the place clean, there is a whole manor surrounded by bandits. But more importantly, behind that is a dock with a seaplane I could lift. It seems Eudez managed to snag an abandoned fortress for him and his lads and dug in. Jameson, in his one line of dialogue in which I like him, talks about how we're gonna whoop these young'uns into shape. Down we go! Yeah, we have an infinite use parachute in our backpack. What of it? So the crossbow. It's an incredibly fiddly bastard to use. I'm assuming we're using lead bolts and cotton strings, since they drop after a good 5 feet and the enemies seem more displeased than dead because of them. I quickly went back to the knife, and from there quickly went back to the gun. So, this fortress raid is my favourite individual shootout in the game. It recaptured that feeling I had in Boiling Point of a fortress designed to be impregnable, mixed with its dilapidation leading to unintended entryways and murder holes I could exploit. And as I got into the fortress proper, I was fighting for every inch of ground. I had to fight slowly and carefully. It was a good fight overall, even if I got flanked a couple of times for my trouble, but that's kind of what I expected. Oh yeah, that happened a good few times after a lot of needles were used. I don't know if it's possible to die from a drug overdose in this game, but suffice to say, Saul is going to be feeling this mission for a long while afterwards. It may be because I still used foods to make up the small digits of health, but along with a perk to make drug tolerance build slower, medicine tolerance felt like less of a factor overall. I never had to worry about syringes the same way I did in Boiling Point. Granted, that lessening of tension of the health system means that a lot of this game's bite is gone. Now I'm only scared of losing all of my health immediately, rather than being out in the field for a very long time and slowly getting less effective. Because random events like ambushes and enemy patrols are gone, I never actually felt that far away from a doctor. I never felt like there may be an obstacle stopping me from getting healing, and so a lot of excitement and tension are gone from the game world. Much of my praise for the health system of last time is still sort of true here, but it's much more forgiving, almost too easy. So, despite puking, I do eventually make my way to Eudez. He blabs that he sold us out as he was being blackmailed and needed money. The identity of the blackmailer is not something he's capable of giving us. He does, however, return 800 of our pesos. This does not bode well for you, Eudez. You've fucked up at every stage of this conversation so far, and I just killed all of your friends for less. But then he does give us the location of an island where the Indians are supposedly growing this poisoned coke, and that saves his life. I just realised, wouldn't it be great if the coke in this game had a 1 in 100 chance of killing you on the spot? Massive missed opportunity. Okay, my seaplane plan was short-sighted. There's no other vehicles around here. Well, luckily these are calm waters, but tell that to the fucking Spartans. I swim to the next island and manage to grab a boat. Before we get back on track, let's check out my island. Huh, a shithole. Shouldn't have expected anything less. But there's still one soul left here, Carlos. Carlos is the best character in the game, he's a bro. The builder who worked for the previous owners of the island. He was quite friendly with them, but a tsunami forced them off and he decided to stick around. We kill some paramilitaries who turn up to claim the place, and thus Carlos is happy to work for Saul. He does hire some builders. However, after talking to the two, I decided to forget about the whole island business. Besides anything else, it was going to cost me 10 grand to get this ball rolling, so sorry Carlos. Maybe if I ever play this game again. I set off for the Indian island, and once there I am greeted by an altar leading up to a large stone doorway. On investigation there's a stone slab by the entrance, and I pilfer it. The locals are less than pleased. Ah shit, my lost save was ages away. Well, luckily it seems the cultists haven't worked out stairs, and tablet in hand, I make a mad scramble for my boat. Jose tells us to take the slab to an antique dealer on Bellina for translation, and seeing as that's our only lead in this cocaine investigation come archaeological dig, let's see how much, 10,000 pesos. Saul isn't even surprised at this point. I don't have 10 grand. I want to point out that if you remove the side quests, this game could be summarised as 6,000, 10,000, 8,000, 10,000 in the span of 20 minutes, with a Black Pearl and Eudez crammed in there. I've also exhausted all of the local employers. Our local photographer is willing to pay 500 quid for some photos. The other antique dealer in the room has me scam an old man out of a ring he's wearing for a few hundred bob more. But then it's revealed that's all the work he has. I couldn't afford your wares? Mate, I own an island. So once again, I'm out job hunting proper. One of my old bits of info points me to an army commander back on Espada, so I shoot off. One annoying habit this does have, which happened 2 or 3 times in my adventure, is that an objective NPC may only be available at certain times of day or will just straight up disappear. However, only when you get in range of them will it tell you that they're away. I'm telling you this now because, as you've no doubt guessed, I just wasted a trip. Getting money in this game can be annoying. It can be a drag. It can feel like a grind. But between this guy just saying, oh, by the way, I don't have any more work, when his setup sounds like he has a lot of work, the Don breaking, some quests are also broken, and we saw what just happened with that disappearing military commander. I find a bloke who wants me to collect a debt from someone, but no matter what I do, I can't get him to pay up. I threaten him and it leads nowhere. I fire off a shot near him, I shoot at him, and that just aggroes everyone else. Unless I'm missing something, there is no way to complete this. And it's really frustrating when a game is telling you, hey, go and do side quests, and some of the side quests are broken. So I wander Espada in the hopes that someone will pull a gun on me so I could sell it. And in my travels I find a band of Mafia smugglers on the coast, tucked away on some little beach flanked by rocky cliffs. It's not well paid work, but it inches me closer to my goal. Not much excitement here work-wise. Ferry some goods, shoot some people, not having fun on the beach. Break a guy out of the military's clutches. I am a little disappointed I can't use my good faction standing to sneak him away peaceably, especially since it looks like I can in dialogue, but it doesn't actually work. I guess bullets speak louder than words. Interestingly enough though, this is the quest line that will get you a boat on Espada earlier than intended. These guys are here from the start, and will give you a jet ski with plentiful fuel. Whether later story quests will actually trigger is for someone else to find out though. But still, there you are, Xenus speedrunning community. This is my meager contribution, 1 strap. With all of their jobs done, I am just over a grand short. I set off back for Bellina, and while looking for employment there, I instead find the guerrilla base. They chased me off the first time, but I decide it's time to be self-employed. I managed to completely clean the place out, lug their guns to my truck, and make up the 10k in sales. I'm sure if the Don was still capable of fort, he'd appreciate my initiative. The stone slab relates to a cult called the Resurrection of the Old Gods, dedicated to restoring the old local faith destroyed by Christian conquistadors, and upon the old gods being reawakened, the world will end. If we want to get past that stone door and into the inner sanctum, we'll need 6 statuettes. It's said whoever possesses all 6 will become bulletproof. This is just a way of saying turn down to easy mode. The collector knows the owners of all 6, seeing as he sold 5 and holds the 6th, and he'll sell that to me for the low price of 5,000 pesos. Gee, thanks, cunt. Naturally, the 6 current holders each belong to different factions, so this is an exam of how you've been treating them up to this point. Well, one of them is paramilitary, so that's a guaranteed gunfight. Why yes, Jameson, I'm annoyed as well. I decide to get the guerrillas and paramilitary out of the way first, seeing as I doubt the rest of the statues will come completely free either. At least here I know what to expect. The guerrilla commandante is holed up in a small base surrounded by trees. It's a pretty straightforward affair compared to what we've faced so far. The paramilitaries have secured an old prison wrecked by the inmates, making for a tough breach. Their boss can also take a hell of a beating. Luckily I learned that from a good few hundred feet away. The remaining 3 are factions I'm on more or less good terms with. The Mafia, the Army, and the Indians. Hey, by now if he's talked about me once, he's talking about me forever. Don Costello laughs at the superstition surrounding the relic, but seeing the worth Saul puts in it, decides he'll let it go for a cool 11k. He'll drop the price if we blow up a guerrilla barge. even lent us some explosives to get the job done. However, I lack the perk to use them. And taking a look at the barge, it seems this is a bit too big for grenades. Yep, sorry pal. Next up, the army. This will be tricky if the big man wants cash I don't have. Galindo is the one in charge here. He has no idea how we got in, but he's willing to hear us out. At the end of our discussion, he's willing to rent out the statue for 8,500 pesos. I misread what he then says and think he'll drop it to 1,500 if I blow up some stuff for him. Turns out he intended to lower the price to 7,000. Sorry I misunderstood you. Eventually, in a coked-up sprint, I managed to hightail it out of there before the helicopter can take off and pursue me. If you don't quite get how much I don't want to go back to building up money in this game, it took more than 45 minutes to pull off that run. I died so many times trying to escape. But anyway, Lord bless you, Coke. You really pulled through for us. And that makes 4 of 6. The Indians don't want money. They respect strength, having been able to keep this village running despite the current climate. The chief doesn't feel Saul is worthy of the idol, but he's willing to part with it if we prove ourselves. He sent us to conquer a cave on that same island as the Great Stone Door. His son went into that cave and has yet to return. Oh yeah, you exist. It's been a while. It turns out that giant spiders are very boring foes. I mean, the wildlife overall in this game could be described as such. I saw rats, crabs, snakes, and some fish. No big sharks or that giant black mutated creature the divers spoke of. No zombies either. I would have taken shark jumping over no zombies. These things though, they crawl, they spit, they die to gunfire. All things a human can do in less. I rip out their mandibles for later resale. Eventually I stumble upon the chief's son as he lays dying, and as he passes he warns that Machado will kill me too, and I brace for a giant spider that never comes. I report back to his dad, and am given the idol. In all this tight-fisted murder, I made up the 5 grand for that last statuette, so after a quick stop off in Bellina, I immediately set off for that stone door. The game should maybe somehow warn you at this stage that you should be bringing everything to bear. Stock up, buy what you need, ammo of all kinds, syringes, coke, food, armor, and get ready for a grueling fight. We place the statuettes, a spear-wielding cultist runs out to greet us, and I learn why they are so wary of stairs. As I make my way to the ruins within, the stone doors slam shut behind me. I am not leaving, the only way is forwards, and there are a lot of people in the way. The cultists make for interesting enemies. They come in 3 flavors: spears, shields, and fusiliers. The fusiliers are nightmares, incredible accuracy, and they hit like a truck. Each of the 3 can take a beating before going down, but at least you can easily outmaneuver spears and shields. But it always felt like a gamble whether I'd get hit by the fusiliers, even at super speed. And one hit from these lads can reduce you from max health to the low 20s. Oh, and they have spiders. After a lot of deaths, lost ammunition, getting lost, and a feeling that I'd made less progress than I wanted, I came up with a new strategy. Despite what it looks like, I'm taking far less damage and conserving ammo. I'm going to say this goes on for a while. This would have made for a test of endurance. I doubt 1,000 rounds would have actually done it. And the fusel, while good in enemy hands, is an unwieldy and unsatisfying beast for Saul. Eventually I make my way to their dungeon, and locked up within is CIA agent Summerson. He knows about the poisoned coke, and spills to a confused Saul the twist. The CIA was behind slipping the poisoned coke into the US. Hey, would you look at that? Saul called it! It's a ploy to create a panic in order to increase their funding. Plus kill off a bunch of junkies and gays. Junkies, yeah, but are gays massive coke fiends? Anyway, before we can bust Summerson out and bust this whole thing wide open, a hit squad rappels in, and Saul is captured. We're taken to a ship and interrogated by Agent Nixon.
Don't provoke me, Myers! You can't afford it in this situation, can you, Myers?
Raise your voice at me one more time and you're a fucking dead man, Nixon!
This fucking tropical heat is killing me.
Both Saul and Nixon sound like they just want to go home.
Myers, who else is in the loop of our business on these damn islands?
How should I know? I'm just a tourist.
Damn it, Myers, you son of a bitch. Stop fooling around.
I warned you, Nixon, don't raise your voice to me!
Or what?
This, you fucking asshole!
Luckily our leftover equipment is in the next room over, as immediately after that gauntlet of tough enemies, it's time for a boat filled with even tougher ones. And an invisible wall. So, remember those soldiers from the ambush? They've been copy and pasted all over this boat, in bulk. This stage is a nightmare. Every enemy is a super accurate bullet sponge that tends to come in groups and wait in advantageous positions, leaving little room to exploit their AI, or even approach them comfortably. If I expose myself for longer than a millisecond, I'm getting shot. Plus, these lads do not drop ammo. Surprise! They do drop tank grenades, which are pretty good, but they do have a habit of crashing the game, which kind of kills my progress as much as they do. After fighting my way through the cargo bay of the ship, I'm hurting. I'm down to a handful of syringes and their efficacy has been effectively shot. And I have to head up through a hatch onto the deck of the ship. It's an exposed area filled with more goons in each direction. Running to the back and taking cover will see you hit with grenades, enemies knowing you'll take some damage when they move to flank, and they'll definitely shave a good chunk of what little health you have left before going down themselves. I actually give up. In this battle of attrition, I have lost. I need more supplies to strong-arm this, and this is a step too frustrating. 2 gauntlets against bullet sponge enemies in a row. Both type of enemies don't drop ammo or health items. I was beaten down. This time, I didn't cheat, however. I just admitted defeat and went down to normal. I reload my last save from before I entered the ruins. Sorry, Chief. Your son's dead too. I stock up a bit more and I'm ready to roll. Right, excuse me, out the way, say hi to your gods. Yeah, massive conspiracy. Hey, bet someone's coming in from the ceiling. No time, Nixon. Pencil me in for later. This ship is still an overstocked nightmare on normal, but by playing like a boring fuck, I'm at least able to fight my way through while conserving most of my stuff, since I have no idea if there's a third gauntlet after this. The deck fight, good god, it goes on so much longer than I could have anticipated, and even on normal, it's tricky. Was the US invading? How many blokes did you need on this ship? Well, I finally drop an escape boat and get past the invisible wall. Jameson and Jose are confused. The CIA is currently investigating itself to find the conspirators, and the source of the cocaine is being tracked down to an island on the southeast end of the map. Looking at its shape, I definitely should have suspected it from the start. Yeah, I'd want to poison the world too if the weather did this. On the island itself is the burnt out remains of a village, and beyond that, the far too grand city of the cult, with a pyramid tucked far at the back. Draw a line on this bloody story, reads the poorly translated objective. I snort some lines and start dashing through their grounds at blinding speed. Coke was their weapon, and it will be their undoing. I climb the stairs of the pyramid, and waiting at the peak is the cult's coked up leader. Good god, he's a laggy fellow. And before I can even properly fight him, he crashes the game. I decide to take a seaplane to his home. I figured it'd be a bit funny, give you all a bit of a laugh at the end. But the seaplane disappeared, so I don't have a hilarious conclusion. I simply leg it again. We confront the chief. It's time for Saul to work his magic.
This isn't the end. Only the beginning. The beginning of revenge.
What revenge? Who would you like to take revenge on?
You white people. You've destroyed our civilization.
Really? And whose fault is that?
Ooh, this'll be fun. The chief reveals that the cocaine is revenge against the white man. And beyond that, as we speak, his warriors are at work, beginning the next stage of their grand plan.
We are driven by the divine cocaine. The same cocaine that kills others. Our gods have made us immune, and we shall wash away all the earth in a river of blood to feed our gods.
About that, if you hate the white man so much, how'd the CIA get in on this? Can you answer me before you do something stupid?
Your gods aren't real, and this has to come to an end.
No, Saul, I have
You're
questions.
a bunch of murderous beasts blinded by rage and hate in their eyes.
What are you going on about?
You are blind.
Why is the dialogue in this game so poor?
You know
I know there are 2 separate translations.
I will kill you.
Maybe the other one's...
Better hope that cocaine's cut with Kevlar, you son of a bitch.
Why is that line so good? Well, the chief is dead, and Saul reflects on the nature of man.
For politics, for trust. Evil that was caused by people hundreds of years ago is staying in people's memory and waiting for its time. Years and ages pass, but the evil does not. It becomes even stronger and gathers power.
Not the time, Saul. The grand plan has started. Let's get out there and save the world.
Is there any possibility for people to learn and to forgive? Can fanatics understand that evil will come back? Maybe not for them, but for their children? And if they will understand, will that stop them? Well, I don't know. But I know one thing. I'm very tired.
That's all well and good and no longer a stat, Saul, but we've still got that conspiracy, the apocalypse. Maybe there's some zombies out there. What? Was that the writer just jotting down that they're tired? What about the record company? Why was that photo so fascinating? That seemed to have convinced you. Where was the giant mutant creature? What happened to Summerson? What did the tribesmen think of that really fast white guy? That's really disappointing. My goodwill was just torn to shreds by those 2 gauntlets, and you do this to me? That was out of nowhere. You can't just say, and then the apocalypse, and not give it to me. The chief wasn't even a coked-up mental boss fight. So, White Gold is sadly rather disappointing. The core combat is better, but that's about it. All the features that surrounded, propped it up, or immersed me in the world are worse. The world feels empty and static. The factions bland caricatures that I didn't entirely buy. Every feature in this game felt underutilized or not properly explored. Boiling Point felt like it was a game made on a budget. This feels like a cheap game. Not to mention underutilized story elements. Why were there giant spiders? The rumours of murder on Bellina. What few islands I explored were empty and dull. It didn't drive me to keep looking for something enthralling. I do regret not starting up my own island, but with the miserliness of this game, it's a tough call to put 10 grand besides to explore it. The miserliness itself is tough to call a draw. It can work if you enjoy the tension of being on the breadline. I didn't get to experiment with some weapons because I was scared of the investment. At its best, the lack of money should drive you to kill people you'd rather spare, or go on dangerous missions to circumvent the cost and hold on to what meager earnings you get. But this game is a bloodsucker, and it feels like it pads out an entirely minuscule main quest line. Let's jump back a second, however. I mentioned you could get on a boat on the first island far earlier than intended. I took it to the final island in the game. It turns out there's a giant lot of rubble in the way to stop you in your tracks. They've anticipated that you might come to this island at any time. Didn't switch off the rain to avoid suspicion, but you can't get into the city. Well, unless you jump it. I speed through the city once more, and it seems I beat the chief here by about 26 hours. And thus ends Xenus 2 again. I'm disappointed a little earlier this time. And also, Jose's talking to me. I haven't even rescued you yet. If you enjoyed this video and want to support further videos like this, I have a Patreon you can donate to. If you're unable to donate or otherwise don't want to, you can still help by spreading the videos around. A thank you to my patrons Eric Nace, DBZ King 119, Noonam, Sigurd, Tamascos, Armin Reddy, Austin, The Tried Piper, Wagman, and Arthur D. Gonzalez Martin. Those of you who donate $5, please submit your questions for the Afterthought video where I'll answer them. And if you donate $3 or more, you'll get access to my notes and my scripts. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.